The jungle doesn't care about your plans. It doesn't care about your experience, your preparation, or your confidence. When Marcus stepped off the trail that humid afternoon in the Amazon rainforest, he had no idea that a simple decision would transform into the most harrowing week of his life. Marcus was an experienced hiker, or so he thought. He had conquered challenging trails across North America and spent countless weekends camping in the wilderness. But the jungle is different. The jungle is alive in ways that forests and mountains can never be. Every shadow moves, every sound carries meaning, and every step forward feels like an intrusion into a world that doesn't want you there. It started with a photograph. Marcus was hiking with a guided tour group through a protected section of the Amazon in Brazil. The group had stopped for lunch near a spectacular waterfall, and Marcus noticed a rare blue morpho butterfly landing on a nearby tree. Without thinking, he stepped away from the group, following the butterfly deeper into the vegetation. But 2 minutes became 5, and 5 became 10. The butterfly led him further and further from the trail, dancing through shafts of sunlight that pierced the dense canopy above. When Marcus finally got his shot and turned around, the sounds of his group had vanished. The jungle had swallowed them whole, or perhaps it had swallowed him. He wasn't immediately worried. Marcus had his day pack with him, containing water, some snacks, a first aid kit, a flashlight, and his phone. The problem was that his phone had no signal, not even a single bar. He was completely cut off from the world. Marcus tried to retrace his steps, but everything looked the same. The trees, the vines, the endless green walls surrounding him on all sides. He walked for an hour in what he thought was the right direction, but he never found the trail. As the afternoon light began to fade, a cold realization settled over him. He was lost. The first night was terrible. Marcus found a relatively dry spot beneath a large tree and tried to make himself comfortable. But comfort doesn't exist in the jungle after dark. The temperature dropped, and even though it wasn't cold by normal standards, his sweat-soaked clothes made him shiver. The sounds were overwhelming. Howls, screeches, rustling, and countless unidentifiable noises that seemed to come from every direction. He barely slept. Every sound made him jump. Every shadow seemed to move with purpose. When morning finally came, Marcus was exhausted, bitten by insects, and beginning to feel the weight of his situation. His backpack inventory was depressing. 2 bottles of water, both now empty, a handful of granola bars, a small first aid kit with bandages and basic medicine, a flashlight with batteries that wouldn't last more than a few hours, a lighter, a pocket knife, his useless phone, and a rain jacket. That was it. That was everything standing between him and the jungle. Marcus knew he needed to find water immediately. Dehydration would kill him faster than hunger. He remembered reading that you should follow streams downhill, as they eventually lead to larger bodies of water and possibly civilization. The problem was finding a stream. He wandered for hours, pushing through thick vegetation, climbing over fallen trees, and wading through mud that sucked at his boots. The jungle was exhausting in ways he hadn't imagined. Every step required effort. The humidity made breathing difficult. Sweat poured down his face and stung his eyes. Finally, late in the afternoon, he heard it, the sound of running water. Following the noise, Marcus discovered a small stream cutting through the jungle floor. He fell to his knees and drank deeply, not caring about the risks. He was too thirsty to care about parasites or bacteria. He would deal with the consequences later if he survived long enough. The next 2 days blurred together in a haze of heat, insects, and constant movement. Marcus followed the stream, hoping it would lead him somewhere, anywhere. He rationed his granola bars carefully, eating only small portions when his hunger became unbearable. The jungle taught him harsh lessons. He learned that the most beautiful plants were often the most dangerous. He learned that insects would find every exposed inch of his skin. He learned that sounds carry strangely in the dense forest, making distances impossible to judge. He learned that rain could come suddenly and violently, soaking everything in minutes. On the third day, he tried to catch fish from the stream using a makeshift spear he carved with his pocket knife. After hours of failed attempts, he managed to spear a small fish. He built a fire using dry leaves and twigs, struggling for nearly an hour with his lighter before getting a flame to catch. The fish was tiny and barely provided any nutrition, but it was the first meal he had earned from the jungle itself, and it tasted like victory. The fourth day brought new challenges. Marcus woke up feeling ill. His stomach cramped painfully, probably from the untreated water he'd been drinking. He forced himself to keep moving, following the stream, but his pace had slowed considerably. His body was weakening. That afternoon, he saw signs of human presence for the first time. A piece of old rope hanging from a tree and what looked like machete marks on a trunk. His heart soared. Someone had been here. Maybe he was close to a trail or a settlement. But as the day wore on without finding anything else, his hope began to fade again. The jungle was full of false promises. By the fifth day, Marcus was in trouble. His clothes were torn and filthy. His exposed skin was covered in insect bites, scratches, and developing infections. He had a fever and could feel himself getting weaker. His last granola bar was gone. He was surviving on small fish, some edible-looking fruits he found near the stream, and constant fear. The psychological toll was becoming as dangerous as the physical one. Marcus talked to himself constantly, fighting the panic that threatened to overwhelm him. He thought about his family, his friends, the life he had taken for granted. He wondered if anyone was looking for him, if they would ever find him, or if he would simply disappear into the green abyss. On the sixth day, something changed. Marcus stopped thinking about rescue and started thinking about survival. He built a better shelter near the stream using branches and large leaves. He improved his fishing technique and caught 3 fish. He found a tree with what looked like edible bark and chewed small pieces for whatever nutrients they might provide. He also found a clearing where he used rocks to spell out "help" in letters large enough to be seen from the air. He didn't know if anyone was searching for him from helicopters, but it felt important to try. That night, as he sat by his small fire, Marcus felt a strange sense of accomplishment. He was still lost, still sick, still in danger, but he was alive. He had survived almost a week in one of the most hostile environments on Earth. The 7th day started like the others, hot, humid, and filled with the endless sounds of the jungle. Marcus had decided to push harder along the stream, covering as much distance as possible. His body protested every movement, but his mind was focused. He had to find help today or tomorrow. He didn't have much more time. Around midday, he noticed the stream was getting wider. This was a good sign. Wider streams meant he was getting closer to a river, and rivers meant possible settlements, or at least boat traffic. His instinct proved correct. By late afternoon, the small stream had merged with a larger waterway. Marcus felt a surge of energy despite his exhaustion. He followed the riverbank, moving faster now, driven by hope. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the water, Marcus heard something that made his heart stop. An engine. The distant sound of a motorboat. He ran toward the sound, crashing through the vegetation, screaming at the top of his lungs. But the sound grew fainter and disappeared. The boat had passed without seeing him. Marcus collapsed on the riverbank, devastated. As darkness fell on his 7th night in the jungle, Marcus was at his lowest point. He had come so close to rescue, only to watch it slip away. The river offered hope, but it also brought new dangers. He was camping in an exposed position near the water, and he could hear large animals moving in the darkness. The night sounds seemed more threatening than ever. Splashing in the river could be caimans or anacondas. Heavy footsteps in the jungle, jaguars perhaps or tapirs. Strange grunting and growling that seemed to circle his position. Marcus kept his fire burning bright, knowing it was his only protection. Around midnight, his worst fears materialized. Something large was approaching his camp. He could hear it breaking through the undergrowth, moving with deliberate purpose. Marcus grabbed a burning branch from his fire and stood up, trying to make himself look larger and more threatening. His flashlight beam caught a pair of eyes reflecting back at him, low to the ground, wide-set, predatory. The animal growled, a deep rumbling sound that vibrated in Marcus's chest. He shouted and waved his burning branch, trying to scare it away. For a long, terrible moment, nothing happened, and the creature faced each other across the darkness, fire and fear hanging between them. Then slowly, the eyes moved away. The sound of retreat faded into the jungle. Marcus didn't sleep for the rest of the night. He kept the fire roaring and his knife in his hand, watching the darkness for any sign of the animal's return. Those hours felt longer than all the previous days combined. Every sound made him flinch. Every shadow seemed to hide threats. When dawn finally broke, Marcus was physically and emotionally drained, but he was alive. He had survived the longest, most terrifying night of his ordeal. The morning of the 8th day brought salvation. Marcus heard the engine again, another boat on the river. This time, he was ready. He had prepared a signal fire with green branches to create smoke. As soon as he heard the engine, he lit the fire and ran to the riverbank, waving his torn shirt and screaming. The boat, a small fishing vessel with 2 local fishermen, spotted him. They pulled to the bank, their faces registering shock at his appearance. Marcus learned later that he had lost over 20 pounds. His face was gaunt and covered in infected bites, and his eyes had the hollow look of someone who had stared into the abyss. The fisherman took him to a small village downstream, where a local nurse treated his wounds and gave him clean water and food. From there he was transported to a hospital in the nearest city. He had multiple infections, severe dehydration, and was suffering from exhaustion and mild malnutrition, but he would make a full recovery. Marcus's 7 days in the Amazon taught him lessons he would never forget. The jungle showed him how fragile human life is when stripped of civilization's comforts. It taught him that nature is neither cruel nor kind. It simply exists, indifferent to human struggle. He learned practical survival skills, but more importantly, he learned about his own mental resilience. The moments when he wanted to give up but kept moving. The nights when terror threatened to paralyze him, but he forced himself to stay alert. The constant choice between hope and despair. The experience changed Marcus permanently. He returned to his normal life, but he was different. He appreciated things he had taken for granted: clean water, comfortable beds, safety, connection with other people. He also carried a deep respect for nature and a healthy fear of its power. When people asked him about his experience, Marcus always emphasized the same point: the jungle is not an adventure playground. It's a living ecosystem that humans can visit but never truly control. One moment of carelessness, following a butterfly, stepping off a trail, can change everything. Marcus's story serves as a reminder and a warning. When we venture into wild places, we enter a world governed by different rules. Preparation matters, respect matters, humility matters. And sometimes, despite everything, survival comes down to luck, determination, and the fierce human will to see another sunrise. The last night was the most tense because it represented the culmination of everything Marcus had endured. All his physical strength had been depleted. All his mental reserves had been tested. He was at his most vulnerable, facing real predatory danger, uncertain if he would live to see rescue. That night condensed all the fear, exhaustion, and desperation of the previous week into a few terrible hours. But he survived. Against all odds, with just a backpack and his determination, Marcus made it out of the jungle alive. His story stands as testament to human resilience and the unforgiving power of nature.